the meeting to order. First item on the agenda is approval of the September 22nd, 2022 board meeting agenda. Excuse me. Yes, of the agenda. The agenda, or yes, yep, of the agenda. So a motion for that, please.
So moved. Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. The agenda has been approved. The next item is public discussion. Is there any public discussion today? Okay, item 4A is a budget discussion. No board action required. It's our opportunity to talk over the budget. Counselor, did you want to lead us into this a little bit?
We put this on because in previous years, sometimes it's felt like we get kind of farther into the process and there haven't been lead up conversation. Right now, really everything that I covered in my director's report is what I have to share about where we are with the process. The reminder that was the CIP sheets are due tomorrow. The kickoff for the whole sort of budget philosophy will be later this month, and then our departmental sort of library of the budget first face-to-face meeting has been scheduled for mid-November. We've got there's some nice pacing there. As I've said before, this is the first year that sort of this new group of finance leadership will be shepherding this process. So far, I've had only positive things to say about the way they're communicating and piecing it out. Very similar to the way that Dennis had been running it before. So I feel optimistic going in. We will learn a lot at the kickoff meeting. And this year, an invitation was extended to all of the leadership team to come for this department and others. So I think that there's sort of they're bringing more into the conversation, which is, in my opinion, are really positive. So I'm looking forward to that. Any questions?
That kickoff meeting, is that the first hint to you to be thinking more or less same?
In previous years, that's been when you kind of get some of the hard facts, the data and things like that, but also, a little bit more of this is the landscape of the budget. So it might be a great year to think about asking for more in these areas or less in these areas, or let's focus on covering inflation rather than new innovation. And sort of, so I'm, that's my biggest question going into is how are we as a group dealing with inflation? Because every line is going to go up.
All right.
So if we are asked to come with a flat or a certain percentage increase, I think there'll be a lot of conversation about what does that actually about prioritizing service and supply. But I think I think that they call it a kickoff and we sort of see it that way because it gives us a chance as a community of department heads to think about, what are we going to push for sort of independently and together, and what does that all look like? So it is, there is an element of sort of okay, the doors are opening to the conversation and it'll be good to have it done.
Other questions for Counselor? Thank you. Next item on our agenda is a policy review of policy 401, the finance policy, and board action will be required on this. Counselor, it looks like you led the charge on this.
Yeah, so the intention of this was really just to clarify language and to break down things that updated links and things like that. I don't feel like there was any change made here that changed the spirit of the document. We were really just trying to be more accurate in what was presented.
I'm sure. Questions about the policy revisions?
Can I ask a quick question? Under 40111B about the discarding of materials or the releasing. I'm wondering if there should have been a clause in there with point 2 to say that the proceeds would be to benefit the library just because we're selling public materials to book vendors? If there should be some crazy, or if we're gonna draw attention.
Well, in some cases, when we sell things, that goes to like a revenue fund. So I'm unsure, there might be some parsing out for that. We did use the language specifically used for the collection development policy. So if we change it here, we might want to change it in the collection.
The only reason I'm asking is because sometimes the public misunderstands what we do with these materials and we want to be as transparent as possible, but also calm any concerns that we're getting rid of public materials. I don't know if anyone else read it that way. It just seems like it says this is how we're going to get rid of things without, including selling things without any justification or clarification.
I can kind of see it both ways. Like we want the clarification, but at the same time, I'd be worried about a slippery slope on having to cover the world and everything in it by explaining it. I'm wondering if there's a way to have it both ways.
So what I'm being proactive about is the people that will, that have been dumpster divers saying there's a lot of materials, and I'm just saying, like, can we head off that? And it's not something I'm stuck on. I'm just wondering if we need that type of clarification.
It's a good point. I mean, it's not, I would say a couple times a year, there are those stories about a community that is
Right. Someone gets very upset with taxpayer material.
really shocked about how materials are handled.
You have more experience with this, so I certainly will follow the staff. I'm just thinking whether if we need to get ahead of it.
I think I feel comfortable with the way it is, but maybe an interim step could be taking a look back at exactly where that revenue does sit, whether it comes back to a library line.
Or if we just said the benefit of the library, maybe we don't have to say revenue line, but
Sell the items to sustainable shelves program that they has. The money does go directly like that off of invoices that we buy for the books. So that does better. I mean, that goes directly to that. Then the other things that we're selling, we expect technically to the Fund Foundation.
right.
And then they choose what to do with the proceeds.
Well, what if it's to support the library's mission, something that
Yeah,
a little
I
more,
like that because it's necessarily ambiguous, but at the same time,
right, and those are still trying to be consistent.
If that change was made here, do you have any concerns about that being in the collection policy?
It's up in November, so I'm just making a note.
Okay.
Make sure that it's.
And I don't need to be nitpicky, it's just that you do hear the concerns of the public sometimes when we're having to release public materials that way, and if they just can go back to our bylaws here, or say, or policies rather, and say, I understand.
So you want that as a mirror with the surplus property up above. A part can say proceed, have just another number for proceeds. Sale of materials.
Yeah, maybe just
yes.
to support the library's mission, something.
Anything else on this policy? Finance policy? I would entertain a motion to approve the policy with the clarification about the benefits benefiting the library. Sale of material.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
And any opposed? Okay, motion passes. We're doing well here, folks. Next item on the agenda is review of policy 801, circulation and library card policy. No board action is required because no changes are recommended. And this is one that we talked about a lot when AIM, so we visited the policy a number of times recently.
I did have one clarifying question for staff on this. I know that was initially our intent with Fine Free to have some type of a public announcement, and I don't believe we've had something along those lines. I'm guessing that it's probably something that just, I don't know.
We did a press release.
Did we?
And it was kind of at the same time as summer reading kickoff,
Oh.
right at the beginning of the summer.
Overshadowed by the big dog. Yep.
And
Where's the best place?
we did a press release,
Okay.
social media stuff. I know it was on social media
Oh,
because
okay.
I had some
Yeah,
comments
yeah,
from
'cause-
people.
Summer reading was there, but I do remember that, I did know.
Okay.
Yeah, or did it make this? We have a little,
I don't remember. if
it might have been in your, well, like in your part, your direction.
Yeah, it didn't have a big, it didn't splash as it was.
I know, it's like,
It was hard to time.
it's so dang crowded.
I think people were just like,
Like, it's like,
you are.
you best. Yep.
Yeah.
Cool. I like it.
Any other questions or comments on the circulation and library card policy? Right. So we can move on to the staff report, starting with Councilor Fisk.
Yeah, felt like sort of a basic one this time. But happy to answer any questions. I didn't bring it with me, but the numbers for the strat plan, number of sessions we've had and the survey responses that we've had have gone up since then, but we're trucking along with that. Very pleased to share that since the handrails have gone in, no comments. No, one way or another,
calls.
it's like they've been there forever. So I did approve that the planters be removed. I'm not sure if it's happened yet. With the caveat that if we were to need them back, I would let folks know because whether or not we love the way it looked, that wasn't effective barrier, but it's so far so good.
I don't know what I had in mind with the rails, but they look great.
They look like they've been there. Yeah.
Yeah, right?
So Elizabeth, when are we up to get a summary of the strategy plan process, just of what those feedback sessions? It will take you a couple of months to let us know the public feedback.
I would say probably probably next month is gonna be too soon, but there
Before
might
the end of the
be,
year.
yeah, there might be like a general thrust kind of a
Yeah,
report,
yeah.
but as far as breaking it down statistically, it won't be.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if we can get a general feeling.
I think next month there could be these are the trends and then following up with a little bit more detail.
Do we have a development director?
I believe that there will be an update early next week.
Okay.
It's the next steps after interviews. There have been some unexpected kind of delays, but we're definitely on the way.
So it goes.
Where's the exterior drop box that you're contemplating? And why is it so expensive?
Oh, I actually was shocked at how inexpensive it felt. I thought they were going to be triple that. So we have drop boxes at a few different locations in the community.
Right.
One's being replaced,
For stars and Ivy.
the First Avenue Hy-Vee. I couldn't remember. One of them got,
One
Run
of
into
Mormon
the-
truck was, Green State was damaged.
and they were replaced more recently. So at the First Avenue Hy-Vee, there's like a circular drive that you can go through the drive-through
Right.
pharmacy. And they have not been damaged by anything. They're just end of life.
They are rusted through. You
They're,
can see light.
they've changed the material they make them out of since those were produced. So they just are sort of grungy looking and not the safest for handling. We haven't gotten a lot of comments from users, but they're harder for the facility staff to empty and
Yes.
they're just time, they're sort of exposed to the weather and we're looking at a very basic model, just sort of something that'll last a long time. We're not doing any super fancy graphics or anything like that. The one comment I've gotten from people is with all the remote book drops, the bigger that arm that comes up towards your car, the better, because nobody likes to have to open their door or back up.
It's very awkward to try to with one hand or
Yeah.
sometimes they need two hands at that first
Yeah.
time falling out of your car.
So there's a couple benefits to it. I'm actually in conversation with the city manager's office about will that be a CIP or not? Because the value is right on the cusp. Like the estimated value is a couple $100 too low to be a CIP.
Yeah.
But by the time it's gonna happen, we can all guess that
Yeah.
will,
What's a CIP?
the capital improvement project. So there's a financial threshold that you have to be over, and this is just nudging up against it. So with their direction, it'll help me know, do we ask for that in the regular budget request or through the CIP?
It creates this perverse incentive to get one with racing stripes.
A little extra.
Yeah.
Light up.
Yeah.
Yeah, and one facility upgrade that I didn't include, it wasn't on the collaborative report. We found several months ago that the sensors of our hand washing faucets in public bathrooms were less or unresponsive to darker skin. Which unfortunately is a design thing that happens because of inadequate testing. So as soon as we found that out, we figured out a way to take care of half of the building. And then we put that in the no move request budget for this year, and it has been completed. So now all of the public restrooms have been updated. In addition, taking care of that, and we also went ahead and updated the automatic flush sensors on the toilets because it was the same vendor, and we thought we might as well get them both done. So kind of one of those sort of almost invisible expenses, but definitely worth for
Right.
service to the public.
Right.
We have to maintain our best public restroom status.
That's right.
I hope so, yeah.
I have voted.
Good, everybody vote.
One of the complaints we always got to was in the women's bathroom, on the first floor, that the soap dispenser never worked, and that's been replaced. So tell Brad, it's amazing.
I had someone specifically mention that to me.
Tell them it's been replaced.
I
It
will.
is phenomenal.
Will.
We're kind of
Go to the music CD bathroom, the soap dispenser there. Okay, sorry.
Back to the Dropbox. Have we considered putting Dropboxes in other places?
I have not thought much about it. They seem to function pretty well. I don't get a lot of comments about it, but we have a strat plan coming up. We could put it in there and something to.
What you thinking?
I'm just thinking when we were talking about fine free, there was a board member who said there were all sorts of places around town to return books, so it's not hard to return your books, but that's not really true. There are big areas of town that there isn't a Dropbox. I don't have a suggestion of where those would be.
The two on the west side and the east side?
Yeah.
And the book.
And the book, yeah, that's probably what someone would throw up as a challenge to that as well. It's the bookmobile, mobile Dropbox.
I really needed to go to this week. I'm gonna lose my hold.
You can call the library. Don't have it on till free.
I'm gonna try to go to.
That's brilliant.
I'm gonna chase it around town.
Yeah.
I'll have to ask leadership team more about the process for choosing the locations. I'm sure it was relatively scientific. But I think that's certainly something to look at. And with the some changes possibly coming to the neighborhood centers, that could be a great location.
Then increase labor costs then also.
Yes, we'd have to loop in facilities for sure.
How often do those get emptied every day?
Yes,
Even holidays, like even on
even
Christmas.
the worst weather, they're out there emptying mail bins.
Anything else for the director's report?
If you haven't walked by the playground construction, do it. It's pretty cool. I mean, it's really going up.
It's gonna have some great, what do you call it? Awnings about it. My wife, extremely pale, was very excited about that.
And there are these pallets of like literally tons of the floor material, like the tires or whatever it is, which is like tons after tons after tons. It's really kind of cool.
Right.
Cooler than I expected.
We have a report from Adult Services. We have a Jason.
He's on vacation.
He's on vacation. But did anyone have any questions or comments on the Adult Services report? And how about Community and Access Services?
The MSS one.
Well, who let that happen?
Well, they did include a lot of pictures, so.
Yeah.
I need to get this at the beginning, but we do have a kid, so you guys can take and pass. Does have some. Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry to get back. If I may, on the director's report, also, I wanted to ask, with the telework policy, do you have said that many library staff are not eligible? Do you have people who are teleworking, and is that working, or?
So we have not rolled it out.
Okay.
So we wanted to hear from the board before if there were any major concerns, we could have made edits to it. This actually was a fairly complex conversation with the leadership team there. I think that there's all kinds of ways that staff will think we're approaching it, whether that's a list of eligible jobs, certain levels of compensation. I mean, I think that you could imagine all kinds of realities because we are public service oriented and because of our hours and our structure. The reality is it's just going to be a minority of cases that we can approve. We're hopeful that the ones that we can approve, that will be a positive and will have a good impact on morale and service and all that. But we're kind of going into it with that hope, and we're going to sort of assess as we move forward. There are departments in the city where it makes much more sense, because that's logistically. And we talked about sometimes making significant changes to the policy before adopting it, and then just decided, let's just be transparent with staff, focus on, we're going to say yes when we can, when we can't, we're going to be really clear about why. And if it ends up, being a negative overall, this is what we're going to sign some of this. But I think by looking at each case individually, as a whole leadership team, we're going to be able to make the decisions, as well as we can. I think one of my concerns is we don't want to get into a situation where we're routinely calling staff back from an agreed upon. We're going to do a flex schedule and then, we're not, we do on desk. So it was a big conversation, but I sent it out as a staff update and expected to get sort of some feedback about it back, but I didn't hear much. So after this meeting, we'll do another reminder. There may be more conversation at that point, but I anticipate that we will get at least a handful of sort of the applications right away from staff who have been thinking about it. And I think that there's a lot of staff who will be watching that process to see how it evolves. And we can, despite it being an HR practice, without giving a lot of details, we can share through how that progress is going with this group. And certainly if we decided that it wasn't, we couldn't continue it or something like that, we'd let you know. But I'm optimistic that we'll be able to meet the needs of some of the folks.
Great, thank you. Let's see, I don't think we have anything under miscellaneous staff reports. We have no president's report, the president being absent and me having. Nothing to say. I got nothing. Are there any announcements from members?
Yeah. So I don't know how many people here are planning to go to the ILA meeting next month. But if you don't know about it, take a look at your emails, because I see you looking at me like you're not sure what they're talking about. But there's a couple sessions there that are geared towards trustees, and it's right here in Coralville. But Anne has been working on a session on trustees' roles and intellectual freedom. And if you're not planning to go there, I think it might be a really good session to have here at one of our meetings of the developmental process, because she's done a lot of research on how this is not really a discretionary approach. This is a mandated approach of what your role is in working with collections and working with the public. So I want to advocate that we consider having it here at the meeting if people are not going to the ILA meeting. I don't want you to have to sit through it twice. Not that it's not good, but sitting through it twice might be a little redundant.
I think it's a great idea.
You also go to, Sam is being sworn in as the new ILA president at this one, so.
I just had it in my head, so it's not a meeting. That's why I was like,
Yeah.
meeting? No, I'm going.
You argue, yeah. Yep.
Well, maybe we should figure out how many people are going and whether,
Yeah, let's-
but I still
Let's
think
see after.
it might be worth going over.
Thank you. Any other announcements from members? Okay. Don't believe we have any committee reports. Friends of. The communications are included in the packet. Brings us to the consent agenda, which contains an approval of our minutes and disbursements. Motion on the consent agenda.
I move that we approve the consent agenda.
Seconded. Thank you. Discussion. And shall we vote? All those in favor?
Hi.
Aye. Any opposed? Almost forgot to put that. And then we can set the agenda for the October meeting, which shows, let's see, budget discussion, first quarter statistics and financials, department reports from children's and collections and IT. Does that agenda look okay to everybody? Did we vote on that? I'm sorry, I don't remember.
I don't think so.
Doesn't say you, so we have okay. More of it. In that case, having come to the end of our agenda,